All right, here we go. Today is day 23 of the 31 days of individuation for the week for the month of October, and I think that with this question, I kind of wanted to explore, I guess, different territory. And the question is, if I could change anything about how I was raised, what would it be? The reason why I think that this question is so powerful and potentially transformative to ask the self is because there's nothing but potential here. It's kind of like a time capsule, right? You have the opportunity to really look at the ways that things were for you and, like how things could have been different, right? Um, I'm grateful that when I look back at my life and everything, it wasn't like I'm not going to get into the logistics of my upbringing. That's what I'm going to do right now in terms of, just what I explore and everything. Um, but what's very relevant is that a lot of people actually find themselves caught in a system that does not enable individuality. There's a huge sense of conformity, right? And this conformity kind of sets you up into a very specific role, right? Growing up, I was somebody who never liked to play by the rules. I didn't like conformity. I didn't like, um, you know, doing things the way that everyone else did them. And what's interesting is that now we're in an era where we're realizing that that may have never actually been beneficial for anyone, right? And when I say that, I look at very specific things like the way that people were kind of automated into getting a degree, or just going to college in general. There's this very automated process to life, and that automated process is scary because it kind of it puts a blindfold on people, right? It puts a blindfold on people, and then it ties them to just this motion, kind of this just blinded sense of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just it's so interesting. And I can imagine that a lot of people here would definitely look at their, how they were raised and be like, yeah, this, that, and the other, all these different things. Somebody might look at how they were raised and be like, I wish that the person that raised me didn't try to teach me that expressing healthy anger was unacceptable, right? Um, and what I'm learning more recently, there was a talk, a podcast episode that I just listened to between Tom Bilyeu of Impact Theory and Gabor Mate, and Gabor was talking about how when we express health, or sorry, when we suppress and repress, I guess you could use both those words, healthy anger, right? When somebody violates your boundaries, then the healthy response is to, get angry and everything. But when we're taught that healthy anger is an unacceptable emotion to express, we actually suppress or repress or both that. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that when you do that, it is very bad for your health because when you suppress your emotions, you are suppressing your immune system. So you're actually making yourself more prone to illness. The reason why it's so important to express your emotions is because when you set a boundary, right? First and foremost, when you set a boundary, it it hold on, Amina. All right, let's get back into it. I got disrupted by something. So, um, healthy emotions. Expressing healthy emotions. What happens when you don't express healthy emotions is that you actually, well, what happens when you suppress healthy emotions, like anger, right? So when you suppress healthy emotions like anger, you are actually suppressing your immune system because emotions and the nervous system, the immune system, they are all the same thing. So I just found this to be very interesting. And what's so interesting about this is that what I've come to learn is that when it comes to like parenting and specifically like, obviously parents, I would argue that they want to do a good job, right? And it's like there's also this like overemphasis, right? This overemphasis when it comes to parenting, when it comes to like you really want to perform well, right? Um, but they have these ideas for how children are supposed to be, right? There's this. I want this to be erratic. I want this to be not taught anymore, even if it's subconscious or subliminally, right? Niceness, right? Niceness births people pleasers and codependence, right? Um, when when somebody learns that the healthy anger that they're expressing is unacceptable, obviously being in such a vulnerable age in their life, they don't know the difference. They can't be like, no, that's gonna fuck up my health. Fuck you. Like they're gonna be like, instead they're gonna be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, and that's not okay. That's not okay at all. Because if somebody violates your boundaries, you gotta get all just like, like you got like, yeah, you feel that fucking anger. Somebody violated your boundaries, and so, like, in terms of like how things could have been differently, like far too many people are taught, like, far too many children are taught that the way that they're being, the way that they're acting is unacceptable. By the way, oh my god. Okay, new take, new take on acting out. Get this, ready? So, you know, parents often they get upset when their children are throwing a fit, right? In the grocery store, right? And it's apparently an embarrassment to them, right? And it's just it's so interesting because when you look at what's actually going on there, think about it this way. This is another thing that Gabor Mate talked about in the episode with Tom Bilyeu on impact theory. He was saying, say for instance you go to a country where they don't speak your language, right? There's going to be a gap in understanding, right? Because you don't speak their language, they don't speak your language. It's pretty much as if you're working with an infant, right? You're looking at them and you're like, what? Right? So like as to a certain extent, like you might have to go fucking charades and like use like hand movement and stuff and try to express visually what it is that you want, what it is that you need. This is exactly what children are doing when they're throwing a fit. They are all emotion. They don't have logic. So it's very interesting when children are like, "You are an embarrassment." No, sorry. It's so interesting when parents are looking at their children in these states and saying that you're throwing a tantrum, you're an embarrassment. It's like, no, your child is acting out because it's trying to express what it wants. Regardless of whether or not it's going to get what it wants, it is doing the best that it can to express what it wants. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just doing what it needs to do. Doesn't understand logic, doesn't have that capacity yet. It is fully emotion, right? So, um, something that I wish that parents could do more of is just accept their children as they are. Just accept them. Just looking in general at, specifically at parenting and children and upbringing and how you're raised. I just wish that children could be more accepted for who they are and not molded into this idea that the parents have for them of who they need to be. No, you're not going to wear those clothes because that would look weird and you need to conform to this ideal and then grow up with fucking depression because you never got to fucking express yourself. It's horseshit. It's complete horseshit. Um, like, and not only that, but like parents, like they had kids, right? And then they're like, "Oh, you're such an embarrassment." It's like, "Oh, well, you're insecure." You clearly didn't have a child to have a child. You had a child for your own insecurity. Like, so, you know, it's just it's encouragement. You don't own the child. You don't. You don't know what there's a very good chance that, especially if you've not taken care of your shit and healed your shit, you do not know what's best for that child. That's a harsh reality. It doesn't matter how bad you want to have kids. It doesn't matter how badly you want to experience that. If you do not know what's best, then you do not know what's best. And I would argue that a far majority of parents are struggling with that, right? So, um, Specifically, what I think is so interesting here is like this whole thing of acting out, right? It's like, yeah, they're acting out. There's nothing wrong with that. Oh, it's an embarrassment to you? Guess you shouldn't have had kids then. You know, like it's so interesting. Um, so yeah, something that could have been different for every kid, and this actually goes directly rooted into individuation and individualism is just parents accepting the way that their kids are. Like when their kid wants to wear something specifically, they don't turn around and be like, "No, you're wearing this instead." No, just allow them to wear it, right? When you don't allow a human being to express themselves authentically, you're taking away their right to experience themselves in life as they want to. And that is fucking devastating. It is. That's just the way that it is. But when you don't allow a child to express the necessary emotions that they need to in accordance with the situation, you are teaching them to suppress, repress their emotions, which fucks up their immune system because it's the nervous system and it becomes dysregulated. They don't even know what the fuck to do with emotions, so they just continue to push them down. And then guess what fucking happens? Chronic diseases. All that stuff. So, and that happens because we get sick, right? Because we're not being the way that we need to be, right? So that's why, just getting angry is important, you know? Somebody violates your emotional space. It's very interesting. It really is. So, yeah, really ask yourself if there was anything that you could change about how you were raised, anything at all. What would it be? What would you change? Would you change that, your parents allowed you to be who you were? Think about it. It's a very interesting thing. Would you change that your parents allowed you to feel whatever it was that you needed to feel, and they just accepted it? They just stood there with you, right? Yep, tell me all about it. And sometimes it's important, like, if it's something that is not good for you, it's important that they don't give it to you. If it's something that you want to wear, I would encourage them to give it to you. I would encourage them to allow you to pick your outfit, right? Because that's important. Because what that does is that instills confidence in you that your decisions are good, right? And who's the person who's supposed to know that best, right? Well, of course, you in the future, but your parent is the one who hopefully is instilling you with a decent sense of direction and understanding all that stuff. So, yeah, if there's anything that you could change about the way that you were raised, what would it be?